when I make my work, whether it's a poem, a short story, or a solo performance, I think of it really as a song. And I think that all stories, in that all cultures really started with oral traditions, all stories come from song. All stories, when we're intent on listening to them, it isn't just because we want to know how the story goes. It isn't only a matter of plot. It's a matter of responsibility. You listen intently because you may one day be called to tell the story yourself. Yeah? So the way that I make my work is in that spirit. And to kind of go into the story behind the song, we'll have to go to Paris, 1993, springtime in Paris. I feel like I should do a little dance for you. I went to Paris to do a research project on French colonial postcards of Vietnam. These are images that were made by French photographers of Vietnamese people and places, right? They, in a sense, were a catalog of the colonial project. They showed girls at the beach, Vietnamese men sitting outside at an outdoor cafe. They showed tigers in the jungle. They showed chickens running on a dirt road. They showed the opera house in Hanoi. They showed schools that the French built. They showed railroads that the French built. They showed hospitals that the French built. And these images were made to be purchased by French people living in Vietnam and sent back to their family and friends in France. I went to Paris to write an academic paper on the relationship between colonial ideology and representation, right? I was looking at these images as some of the earliest Western depictions of Vietnamese people and places. And I was reading them, in a sense, as a form of trafficking, as a form of, transporting of Vietnamese bodies to far-flung places, to France. So I arrived in Paris in 1993, and it was my first time since I had arrived in the United States in 1978 that I was in a country, right, neither Vietnam, not the US, where I really didn't speak the language. And in the process of transitioning between English and French, it came back to me, these very intense memories of going from Vietnamese to English, okay? So I went to write this paper, but when I found the images, which were being sold at flea markets in Paris, what I realized was that the people in the pictures looked like people in my family. They looked like my sisters. They looked like my father and my uncle. They looked like my mother and my aunts. And I just was so filled with longing and a sense of inheritance in terms of these postcards and images. I wanted all of them. I felt like they were like far-flung family photographs, and I should somehow be able to take them all with me back to the US. And I was very aware that historically I was at a unique moment because, you see, I wasn't the intended audience for these images. At a different time, I would be in the images. Okay? And here I was, I had this opportunity to gather them, okay? And when I was looking at the images, I realized that having grown up in the United States, most of the images of Vietnam and Vietnamese people had to do with the American War. And those images were always, in a sense, a setup. You get involved with a Vietnamese person in a movie, and they always die. You get involved with, a Time Life photo essay of a Vietnamese, person, and they always die. That was the story. They always die, right? If you watch Platoon, if you watch Rambo, if you watch Full Metal Jacket or Apocalypse Now, the story is not really about Vietnamese people or places. It's about the US soldiers who have basically been dropped there to fight the war. And the Vietnamese people are kind of a backdrop to the drama of the US soldier, okay? okay? They are inseparable from the rice paddies. They are inseparable from the mountains. They are inseparable from the water buffaloes. They die. That was the setup, right? They never lived. They never lived. They never lived. They were never characters who were individuals. You never saw them live. There was never pleasure. There was never ecstasy. There was never sorrow. Really, they were just there in a sense to be the backdrop, inseparable from the jungle, inseparable from the tigers in the jungle, inseparable from the heat, inseparable from the humidity. They never lived. So there I was in Paris in 1993 looking at these postcards, and I felt an immense sense of loss, a profound sense of loss, an ocean's worth of loss, okay? And I remembered in this process, right, earlier, of going from Vietnamese to English, I remembered how freighted it was for me to learn English, and how the way that I used English was so proficient. It was so much about, going to the welfare office, going to the school office and saying, this is my name, or this is my father's name, and we live here, and this is what we need, and can you help us, and et cetera, et cetera. And I often spoke for my father because I could speak English without an accent. People could understand me. And I was a little girl, so I wasn't a threat, and it wasn't frustrating, right? People wouldn't have to stand there and have lose patience with my father trying to struggle to get the words out. So there was a way that I kind of, small as I was, young as I was, because when we first got to the States, I was only 6, I kind of stepped in front of him, and I kind of took my coat or whatever, and I went, and I threw it behind me, and he was back there, and we were kind of like this weird animal, and I was this voice saying, hi, my name is Min Lei, And we would move around, and it was a way, language was like a coat, and it was a veil, and it was a way that I protected him. And it was a way for us to maneuver through the country, through our life in this country. So when I was in Paris thinking about all of this, one of the things that came back was April 30th, 1978, which is the night that I left Vietnam by boat with my father and over 75 other people in our fishing town. We left on a wooden fishing boat. We went out into the open sea. It was an escape because we were living under a communist system. We were actually not allowed to leave, but we went out into the open water at night. And we didn't really know where we were going. There wasn't a plan per se. There was only a plan to get out. There wasn't a plan in terms of what would happen to us after we left. And all sorts of things could happen to you. You could be attacked by pirates. You could run out of food and water. You could die. It wasn't guaranteed that anyone would pick you up, okay? We were very fortunate in that we were picked up by a US naval ship and taken to a refugee camp in Singapore, where we then stayed and then were sponsored by a church group to come to San Diego, okay? So this is all happening to me in Paris. 1978, April 30th is coming back to me in Paris, right? And I'm thinking, right, I left under very fraught conditions. I learned English under very fraught conditions because my sense was that if I didn't master English, then my father and I, and eventually the rest of my family arrived, we would all be cast out, right? We would be sent out. Because at the time, the US and Vietnam didn't have relations. So it wasn't that we could go back to Vietnam. We would just go back out into the open water. So that was why I learned English so quickly, right? I thought, I have to learn it, and if I don't get it right, they'll send us out. They'll send us away. We won't get back to Vietnam. We'll just be sent out in the night again onto the open water. So one of the things that happened that night, April 30th, 1978, and one of the things that came back to me in Paris, 1993, was the morning after the night when I woke up on the boat and I couldn't figure out why my mother wasn't with us. I was 6 years old. I had never left Vietnam before. I'd never left my little town before, okay? So the world, I was fine because I was with my father, but I really didn't understand why my mother wasn't with us. And I thought, well, okay, we're on this boat, and when we get off the boat, she'll be there. So when we got off the boat and we were in Singapore and she wasn't there, I thought, well, okay, when we go into this big metal box that is going up in the sky, well, when we get out of the metal box on the ground, she'll be there. And we got out and she wasn't there. And I couldn't understand why she wasn't there. And at one point, I asked my father, is she dead? And he said, no, she's not dead. She's just not here with us now. And I couldn't understand as a child that there's a difference between distance and death. Because I, as a child, had never been forced to really absorb distance. I hadn't been separated from family, really, I hadn't gone across the ocean. I hadn't been in a plane. I hadn't been in an elevator. I hadn't all of these things. And I thought, well, if everything I know and everyone I love is over here somewhere, but I can't see them, why is that? And I can't even turn to them, why is that? And if they're not dead, then why don't they just come over here? I couldn't understand the difference, all right? So Paris was intense, and I had to write this paper, right? What is the relationship between colonial ideology and representation? And I thought, I don't care. I don't know, and I don't care, right? I need to find a way to bring these pictures, bring these people, bring them back with me. I need to carry them back with me. How am I going to do this? So I'd go for long walks, and I was really homesick. I felt homesick for Vietnam. I felt homesick for the US. I felt homesick for English. I felt homesick for Vietnamese. And as I was walking, I started to sing to myself. I just started to sing to myself in Vietnamese. And the song that I started to sing was like a bit of a lullaby that my mother used to sing to me, right? And the lullaby goes, "Âu ơi dí dầu, cầu giang đóng đinh, cầu tre lắc léo." And, it's about a bridge, or she'll say, bỏ hành cho thơm, bỏ tiêu cho ngọt, right? I'm making soup. I'll put in a little spring onion to make it fragrant. I'll put in some black pepper to make it sweet and spicy. Or it goes, nín, nín, nín đi con, thôi ngủ, ngủ đi con, con nín, nín đi con ngủ, ngủ đi con. So that's just saying, hush, 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 child. Sleep, sleep, child. Sleep, sleep, my child, right? Those were the fragments of the lullaby that my mother used to sing to me. And as I continued walking at night in Paris, I started to hear this other song. And the other song started with this word, cung, cung. That's how it started, cung, And cung is a word that means to honor the dead. It's a ceremony where you honor the dead. Most Vietnamese families have an altar, an ancestral altar, where they have a photograph of those who've passed, and they usually have fruit on the altar and incense offerings to the dead. So the first word was cung, cung, and it was like a gong. Cung, cung, I'm walking in Paris. Cung, 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 cung. Then another word came, cam. Cung, cung, cam, cung, cung, cam, cung, cung, cam. Cam is orange. It's the fruit. It's what you put on an altar. Cung, cung, cam, vàng. Cung, cung, cam, vàng. Vàng, vàng, that's the color of the orange, right? Cung, cung, cam, vàng. Cung, cung, cam, vàng. I'm walking and this thing is coming to me, right? And then it's like, sao vừa có sáng, sao vừa có sáng. That's just, what's that? That's not saying anything. It's just this, that. Sao vừa có sáng. Okay? And then another word comes, nước. Nước mai, nước means water. It means nation in Vietnamese. Nước mai cam vàng, right? And then a sentence comes. Má ơi, rước con đi về, con muốn đi về. Má ơi, rước con đi về. Mother, come to me. Lead me home. I want you to lead me home. So I'm going to show you two images that will show you how I brought those postcards back and represented them. And then you'll see. Okay. So this is the postcard, and this is from the performance. So I'll just close with the song quickly, all over again, yeah? Okay. Cung, cung, cam vàng, sao vừa có sáng. Cung, cung, cam vàng, sao vừa có sáng. Nước mai cam vàng, nước mai cam vàng, vàng cung cam vàng. Má ơi, rước con đi về, con muốn đi về. Má ơi, rước con đi về. And that is the child's response to the mother's call. Thank you.